Welcome to Beyond the Diagnosis. I am so elated for you all to join me on this journey and to dive more into the background of the Baylor Strong Project, who we are, why we even exist, and to tell you more about myself. If you've never met me before, my name is Ashley Baylor, and I am the founder and owner of the Baylor Strong Project, LLC. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please press pause, hit that subscription button, and make sure you click the little bell next to it for notifications so you are up to date and aware of when we drop new episodes.
Got the kick. Got the kick.
I will never forget the day my dad announced to us as a family that he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I don't know how many of you are cartoon fans, but I absolutely love Tom and Jerry. And you know those scenes, Tom was crazy, right? So he was always doing something reckless. And when like an anvil would fall on top of him, that's what it felt like when my dad told us that he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I was like, he's going to die. Like instantly, because all I knew about pancreatic cancer at that time is that it was like a death wish. Like that was not a diagnosis you wanted. And it was like time stood still. I promise y'all, if I was an artist, I could draw this scene out for you. Time stood still. My eyes got so big. I remember staring at my dad because I was trying so hard not to cry. Because I know my dad, right? Like, he wasn't big on all of that. So I was like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. This is what I'm telling myself internally. And then the tears just start running down my face. And he was compassionate. He told me to come to him. He sat me in his lap and he just gave me the biggest hug. And, he was like, it's okay. He was like, don't put me in the grave. Like, I'm not dead. And I'm just like, oh my God. So my dad was not supposed to live as long as he did. My dad actually lived over a year. He was supposed to be like gone the month he found out. His doctor was like, if you wouldn't have come in when you did, you wouldn't have made it. he got on chemo. He did that and immunotherapy. And then he ended up with blood clots. And then everything just happened very fast from that point. He went to the hospital because he was having back pain. They found blood clots in his lungs. They treated that, and in that time frame, he found out he was terminal, and then they sent him home on hospice, and then he was gone. It was like a snowball effect. And a couple of months after that, so that happened after my 30th birthday. So birthdays have been they've been a little hard for me the last 4 years, because it's like you turn 30 and then like 2.5 months later, your dad transitions and he's gone, and you have to now process that. So a few months later, I reach out to a friend of mine who's a doctor, and I asked her how I could get involved with the pancreatic cancer community, because I didn't want other families going through what my family went through. And I was like, we got to raise money. I want to give money to research. We have to have a cure for this and better, prevention. Immediately, she sent me a link to this organization called the Lustgarten Foundation. They are based in upstate New York, and they dedicate funds directly to researchers. And that was what drew me to them, is that the money that those of us who volunteer and host fundraising events, the money we raise goes directly to researchers and labs that they fund for pancreatic cancer. If you're interested in knowing more about the Lustgarten Foundation, I will be sure to include a link down below. The interesting thing is that my dad is not the first person in my family with pancreatic cancer. The first time I ever saw the effects of pancreatic cancer was when I was a kid. I had an aunt who happens to be one of my dad's younger sisters who passed away from pancreatic cancer. However, I didn't know that until after my dad transitioned. And then I found out that a cousin on my dad's side of the family passed away from pancreatic cancer as well. So now me and my eldest sister are like, wheels are turning. So I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to get genetically tested and find out if this runs in the family. Since then, I have been dedicated to learning every single thing that I can about pancreatic cancer, the options available to families, and the resources I believe families need to know about and have access to. I'm a STEM major, and I decided that I wanted to try and use everything I could based on my own knowledge to help my dad. I have a bachelor's in biology as well as a post-bac in kinesiology, along with a certification in massage therapy. I desire to be a physical therapist myself, and I figured, well, you've been learning all this science stuff, like, let's see what we can find out. So I started researching whether or not physical therapy is beneficial for patients diagnosed with cancer, and I learned that it is. And through my professors, I learned about cancer rehab. Cancer rehab is fairly new. It's about maybe about 15 years old, and it's still shockingly not as recommended as it should be. You would think that more patients would be referred to therapy for assistance and aiding in their plan of care. I'm strongly passionate about advocating for cancer rehab to be a part of the standard plan of care for patients diagnosed with cancer. I don't understand why it's not. It should be, because it's not just chemo, it's not just immunotherapy or surgery. A patient has to be strong just to withstand any of those treatments. You need a great nutrition plan, which is why I highly recommend a dietitian for anyone. And you have to exercise. Your body has to be able to produce energy and use energy in order to generate the strength needed to withstand treatment. So one of the disservices I believe done to families is that it's not properly communicated and explained why they should exercise. And no, not just walking. Walking is cardio. You need strength training. Strength training is important for your muscles because the stronger you are in muscle, the better your immune support is. It all ties in together. So usually it's just focused on what they eat and making sure that they stay active. But you need guidance with that, because what does staying active really look like for any patient and their family? That's one of the many reasons why I started Beyond the Diagnosis. I wanted families like mine who've been left out there to figure it out for themselves to not do that anymore, and to have a place of resources where everything can be laid out in front of you and you can make confident and clear decisions medically with and for your loved one. A pancreatic cancer diagnosis is already devastating. The last thing you want is to feel like you're lost and confused about what step you should take, what direction you should go in. Is this a good decision? So do we not have any options available to us? And let's just be real. Let's keep it a buck. Most of the time when it's a cancer diagnosis, they kind of make you feel like there's nothing else that you can do. But I want you to know that there's actually a whole lot you can do. There's a lot available to you that is not readily given or provided. I also wanted to create a space for families to have the real conversations no one wants to have, because no one wants to talk about death, but we got to talk about it. We have to talk about what needs to happen leading up to, what needs to happen after. We need to talk about the pain caregivers feel while they're taking care of their loved ones, while their loved ones are suffering, and the agony and the mental roller coaster that you go through, the emotions that come up for us. Those things need to be discussed in a space where you don't feel guilty or bad about it. Because let's be real, the cancer diagnosis just does not involve the patient. It involves their entire family. Everyone's lives is in an upheaval now, and we've been turned upside down. Like, your whole life is turned up on its head. So I invite you all to join me and to allow yourselves to be vulnerable in this space and for us to get real and to have an understanding. I'm not just here to educate you. I'm also here to share my story, my family's story, and to help you process through emotions and to process through the mental hoops that we often jump through, to process through the guilt you might feel. And I also don't want you to feel like you have to Google search everything, because Google is a public platform. Everything is not created equal in regards to information. So I want you to have a one-stop shop where everything's already made available to you. Why did I choose the Baylor Strong Project as the name? Because it represents who my dad was as a person and as a man. My father was strong. He was resilient. He didn't want his diagnosis to be his identity. It may have been his circumstance, but he did not want it to rule who he was. So I learned a lot from watching my dad go through the hardship of a cancer diagnosis. And I watched him maintain his character and, the things that made him great as a person. He still laughed a lot. He still got up in the pulpit and he preached week in and week out. He still taught every week. He still prayed regularly. He got up at his same time. Like, when I tell you nothing changed, nothing. My dad was still disciplined at making sure that he spent time with God in the morning, read his Bible, studied the Word of God. He, spent time with us as a family. And he showed me what it means to still show up and not allow your circumstances to completely take control. Now, please hear me. As a matter of fact, come close. Please hear me. I am not telling any of you to act like you're not in pain, because my dad did not do that. When my dad was hurting, He made it be known that he was hurting. When he needed to rest, he took his rest. When he felt sick, when he would lose his balance, all the things that we're going to dive into that stuff. The effects of the cancer, the effects of the chemo, how it impacted his day to day. All of that was still very much so in the pot. But he did not let it defeat him. And that's the message that I want to pass. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because as families, it's so easy once we get the diagnosis to immediately feel defeated. And trust me, I understand, because that is how we felt. We felt defeated initially, but watching my dad power through in spite of is what helped us to turn over a new leaf and to have a perspective we did not have initially upon receiving the news. I'm really looking forward to building a community with you. Make sure that you share this channel with friends and loved ones and whomever you think may benefit from Beyond the Diagnosis. The name itself is because the diagnosis is not the destination. I also hope you all are tuned in and ready for our next episode that drops next week, Friday. We have a dear friend of mine named Luke who will be sharing with us tips for caregivers about time management, how to be intentional and thoughtful with your time so that you don't feel so overwhelmed. Thank you all for joining me on our first episode. I will see you soon.